Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. It's been a year and 19 days since I last made a YouTube video. I apologize for that. I've been very busy with life, graduating high school. I graduated about a month, almost 2 months ago at this point, in the start of June, and then I went to work overnights, so I've had a bit of a busy schedule, but with me working overnights now, I do expect that I will have more time on my hands to be uploading videos. And I am also potentially going to be moving out of Minnesota to Wyoming um, within the next year. So who knows? I'm going to try to get as many videos as I can before I move. The timetable on that is a bit shaky, but we'll see. With that, let's go ahead and get started. This is a Senate election prediction for 2026. A lot has changed since I last uploaded. Um, some for the good, some for the bad, and I'm here to talk about it. So, um, I think Republicans, just before we get started, I think they will retain the Senate. I just want to get that out of the way so there's no surprises. This map is very unfavorable to the Democrats. That being said, I'm not saying they couldn't win it because there's a chance. It's an outside chance, but there's a chance. But it would rely on them going through a very unlikely path that probably won't happen. I'm getting 2018 vibes from the Senate all over again, where Democrats think they can win it. Um, like they think they can flip Texas, for example. So I don't know. I think Republicans will hold it. They could gain seats. They may not. I don't know. But we'll get into that here. So, I filled out all the states that are going to be safe red or safe blue. I'm actually going to keep Nebraska as a toss-up because that independent guy Dan Osborne is running. So that'll make things interesting. I don't know why I filled that out as safe. So these are all the safe states. The Great Plains for the Republicans: Wyoming, Montana, South Dakota, Idaho, Kansas. The Deep South: Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, South Carolina, Appalachia, parts of it like Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia. And for the Democrats, they will win much of the eastern seaboard, parts of New England, the West Coast, as well as two states out west in the Southwest, Colorado and New Mexico, as well as Illinois. All right, let's go ahead and get into the likely states for both parties, starting with the Republicans. I think Florida will be a likely Republican victory. I don't remember who's running for this race. Um, I know this is a special election to fill Marco Rubio's seat because he became the Secretary of State. Um, I think it's Ashley Moody, if I recall correctly, the former Attorney General of Florida. I think Moody will win probably around 8 to 9. I don't think maybe we could put this as safe, but actually no. I'm gonna keep it as 8 to 9. Um, yeah, I'm gonna keep that as such. I think Moody should win. Um, not by like as much as DeSantis or Rubio won by in 2022, but I think she'll win by about 8 to 9. I could see her breaking 10. Florida is a red state for what it is now. It's redder than it was 4 years ago. But I think with the national environment being D+4, D+5, essentially akin to 2020, I think Florida will vote similar to how it did in the midterms in 2022. Um, in Texas, I think now this is a state I honestly think Ken Paxton will win by about 5 to 6. This is unpopular, as I know all the polls show that Tallarico is either tied or in the lead. There is a recent poll by Texas Public Opinion Research that has Tallarico up by 5. That is not going to happen. If Tallarico wins by 5 points, I will delete my YouTube channel, which I know nobody cares, but I will delete my channel if Tallarico wins by 5 because that is not going to happen. I don't know where they must have taken a sample from San Antonio or or like or Plano, they clearly didn't sample Texas correctly. This has 2018 vibes written all over it. Tallarico is a weirdo, and he has zero appeal in the state of Texas. The only thing that he has going for him is that he can scream about Donald Trump. The problem is that Texas voted for Trump by 14. Um, but nonetheless, I think Paxton will come out on top. I think it'll be Paxton plus 5.5. It'll definitely be closer than 2024. And I think however, again, Tallarico, there's also a Dem Civil War brewing. You have Jasmine Crockett refusing to endorse Tallarico. She's actively campaigning against him. She's calling for her supporters to do like a third party campaign. If that goes accordingly, that will screw. Which I'm not gonna say. I think Democrats should do that because that would screw them. That never interrupt your enemy when they make a mistake. But um, moving on to Nebraska, I think that'll be likely. Now, in Nebraska, Pete Ricketts, I think you could probably move this to safe. Pete Ricketts is a much stronger candidate than Deb Fischer. Now, here's the thing, is that Dan Osborne is a uniquely strong independent. Now, part of that is he's not a Democrat. He basically is, but he's LARPing as an independent. I don't hate Dan Osborne. He's not like the worst, but I don't like him necessarily. I think he's interesting. He has some interesting beliefs about stuff. Like he's pro Second Amendment. He's anti-war. Um, he's socially liberal to a degree. I don't know. He kind of is he's an attempt he's a plant by the Democrats to try to look moderate. However, Pete Ricketts is a lot stronger in Nebraska than Deb Fischer. Ricketts is a lot more popular statewide. On the same ballot where Osborne almost beat Deb Fischer in a safe red state, Ricketts won by 25 points. Now, part of that is he basically faced no opposition. Preston Love Jr. was a opposition in name only. He was their sacrificial lamb. However, you go back to 2020. You go back to 2020. Ben Sass won that seat too, pretty handily. Part of that is the Democrats were, completely divided against each other. But still, I think Ricketts will win by about 10 to 15. I don't think it'll be by 20. I think Osborne will do okay. I think this will be the weakest performance of Pete Ricketts' Senate career, but still, Ricketts still does have a lot more appeal than Deb Fischer. Minnesota, I think that'll be likely DFL. Now, Republicans have a shot at winning this seat. The Democrats are eating each other right now. You have a very divided Democratic primary field between Angie Craig, a U.S. representative from the South Twin Cities Metro, and Peggy Flanagan, the incumbent lieutenant governor under Tim Walz's administration. On the Republican side, you also have a divided primary, but it's not as bitter. You have Adam Schwarza and Michelle Tafoya. Now, Michelle Tafoya is my preferred candidate because she actually has a chance at winning. She is leading all the primary polling pretty big, so that's good news. However, I still think that the nominee will be Angie Craig in the general. I would give this to Craig by about 5 to 6. Actually, yeah, probably maybe 8 to 9. I think Craig will win by about 9. There was a chance about a year ago. I think Minnesota could have been a potential Republican pickup, but the political developments that have happened in Minnesota have really galvanized the DFL at a time when they should be demoralized. The ICE stuff that occurred in the Twin Cities, not too far from where I live. All of the, all the stuff that happened, with the Somali fraud, which should have, which basically ended Tim Walz's political career and looked like it would set up a potential flip for the governor's race. It does look like the DFL has largely covered that up and reconciled that. So I don't know. Craig should win. If it's Peggy Flanagan, then we could talk about Michelle Tafoya winning this race. But for now, I think Democrats, just because Minnesota is Minnesota, it will retain its inherent Democratic lean. Next up, we have Ohio. I think Husted should win. Again, this is Ohio we're talking about in the Big 2-6. This is not the same state it was in 2018. Sherrod Brown was thrown out by the voters of Ohio 2 years ago by Bernie Moreno, which Bernie Moreno was not the most popular candidate, and he underperformed Trump by quite a bit. But nonetheless, he still beat Sherrod Brown, of all people, who was an electoral juggernaut in Ohio. John Husted, I think it's Husted, John Husted, is a much more popular figure than Bernie Moreno. Husted is tied to Mike DeWine, who won re-elect. Now, granted, Mike DeWine, ran against a complete nobody in 2022, but Husted is well liked in the state. And Sherrod Brown, he lost statewide. Now, yes, that was a general election with Trump at the top of the ticket, but nonetheless, I think John Husted being more popular than Bernie Moreno, I think he should win this race. Now, yeah, Sherrod Brown is outraising him like 5-1. Sherrod Brown has $38 million in the bank, while Husted has $14 million. But the polls consistently show about a 3 to 4 point lead for John Husted. Some polls, which are all Democrat internals, one poll has Brown up by 8 points. I don't know why they think. I don't know. I don't know where they got that from. They must have polled like Akron or Toledo, because there's no way Brown is going to win by 8. That's nonsensical. The latest poll by New York Times has Husted up by 3. I think Husted wins by about 5. Akin to Bernie Moreno in 2022. Iowa. Now, this is a race that could be interesting because at the top of the ticket for the governor's race, you have weird stuff going on with the Democrat auditor, Rob Sand, who is somewhat popular in Iowa, going up against Zach Lawn, who I don't know much about. But in Iowa, you have Ashley Hinson. She's a relatively, popular U.S. representative from Iowa. I want to say the 1st district of Iowa, if I'm not mistaken. Josh Turek is not really the strongest candidate. I think she should win this race. I think Hinson will win by about 6. I think the polls are vastly overestimating Democrats. At the governor level, I think Democrats could very well win that. But at the Senate level, at the federal level, Iowa is a lot more Republican leaning than it is at the state level. The state level, it's a lot more elastic. So I think Hinson should defeat Turek, not handily, but akin to like 2018 margins for Republicans, in Iowa. That's it for the likely states. Now on to the actual competitive races. Starting in the Northeast, you have the state of New Hampshire. Now, New Hampshire is interesting because Gene Shaheen is not running for re-election. Chris Pappas, the representative for the 1st district, is the leading Democratic nominee. He is up against Karishma Manzur, who is the progressive candidate. That is like the DSA candidate. Pappas has completely outraised Manzur, and he is certain to win the primary. And on the Republican side, you have the brother of former Governor Chris Sununu, John Sununu, running for this seat. He is outraising he is outraising the former Massachusetts Senator Scott Brown. Anybody remember him? He's outraising him in the primary. Sununu is ahead by 30 points. What do I think will happen? Right now, the polls don't look too good for Sununu. Actually, I shouldn't say that. They actually look okay. The most recent polling only has Pappas leading by 1. It is a Republican internal, so take it for whatever you will. But like St. Anselm College, he's down by 6. That's not good. University of New Hampshire has him down 7. That's also not that good. Um, but I think this race will go to the Democrats. I think this should be about a 4-point win for Pappas. John Sununu, by reasoning of his name, as well as Chris Pappas. I don't want to say he's a nobody, but I mean he hasn't really been, like a statewide environment is different than a federal environment. New Hampshire, or that's all I'm going to say. Um, Pappas is a chronic electoral overperformer, but I digress. I think it'll be about a 4.5 point win for Pappas over Sununu. In Maine, I would expect Susan Collins to hold. The complete disaster class that the Democrats have put on there has been entertaining to watch. You had Graham Plattner, who was a crazy person, and then the Democrats didn't like him because the establishment saw him as a threat, and so they threw out Plattner and they replaced him with Troy Jackson, who's like even worse and actually apparently might have done worse stuff than Graham Plattner. The Dems are in disarray. The general election polling has Troy Jackson winning by 3. No, I think Collins will win. Troy Jackson hasn't raised that much money either. Collins has almost $20 million raised, and she has about 11 million cash on hand. I would expect her to win. This will be a very close election for her, though. All things considered, normally she wins consistently by like 5 to 10 points. I think this will, and before that she won by 37 in 2014. This time around, I think Collins will win, give or take 2 to 3. It'll be the fight of her life. But I think her moderate image compared, alongside the disaster that has been the Democratic primary, if you even want to call it that, in Maine, I think that gives her the advantage. Before I thought she was going to lose. Before that, I would have given it to Plattner, but yeah. So moving on down to North Carolina. So Democrats are the favorite in this race right now. Roy Cooper is the former governor of North Carolina. He was pretty popular. Going up against Michael Whatley, the former RNC chairman, who did a pretty good job as RNC chairman. What do I think will happen in this race? Well, currently Tom Tillis is the incumbent. He's not that popular. He's a Republican. He's not running. The polling data does not look good for Michael Whatley. Polling consistently shows him, the most recent one shows him down by 9. That's a Democrat internal, Beacon Research, so take it as you will. Public Policy Polling, PPP, has him down by 4. New York Times has him down by 7. YouGov has him down 14. Harper Polling has him down 11. That's a Republican internal. Change Research has him down 7. That's really not good. That being said, I don't think Roy Cooper is going to win by 11 points, or whatever that YouGov poll had him up by. I do think Roy Cooper is the favorite. I think you could put this as lean D. I think it'll be D plus 4, D plus 3 currently. Now, Michael Whatley has a very good chance at winning this race, but so far I'm not impressed by his campaign. He's kind of not really running a campaign. He's got to kick it into high gear because Roy Cooper has been going around all across North Carolina. He's out raising Michael Whatley. He's out spending Michael Whatley. It's not even close. He literally is outraising Whatley by like a 3-to-1 margin. And he has almost like more than 5 times the amount of cash on hand than Whatley does. Whatley has $3 million cash on hand. Roy Cooper has almost $21 million. So actually, he has almost 7 times the amount of money that Whatley has to spend. And he has outspent him 2-to-1. He spent Cooper has spent $14 million. Whatley has spent $7 million. However, I do think the partisan lean of North Carolina will make it a bit closer, being that Whatley is not Mark Robinson and, presumably did not do weird things on a porn site 14 years ago. I don't think he did. He should win, or Cooper should win, but it won't be by 15 or whatever freaking he won by, whatever Stein won by in the governor's race. Georgia, not too happy about who Republicans got as their, well, actually, I'm thinking of governor. Mike Collins is facing off against John Ossoff. On paper, you'd think Ossoff would be the favorite. Or excuse me, Collins would be the favorite because Ossoff was elected in fluky circumstances in 2020, and the runoff, which was just a complete clusterfuck. This time around, I think Ossoff has done an okay job at moderating his image, even if he isn't necessarily all that well liked. And he's also raised almost $100 million, while Mike Collins has barely doesn't even have 10 million. That was as of a month ago. Now, Mike Collins is running a good campaign. Granted, he did run a somewhat divisive primary with Derek Dooley. And I am concerned that that primary will hurt him in Atlanta because Dooley was pretty popular in the Atlanta area, partially because of his dad's name. But I digress. I think that race will go to Ossoff by about half a point. I don't think Ossoff will win that race by 9. I don't know where they got that from. They must have only polled Atlanta or something. But I still think Ossoff is the favorite. That being said, Republicans could make it interesting. Mike Collins is a strong candidate, and so he very well could win this race. It's a dead heat. Ossoff is probably the favorite. And finally, we've come to Michigan. I was saving Michigan for last because I wanted to talk about this quite a bit. Republicans have avoided a divisive primary in Michigan. Mike Rogers is the only candidate running on the Republican side as of right now. He is the presumptive nominee. Rogers has a big amount of cash on hand compared to the Democrats. Now, the Democratic primary is for lack of a better word, a fucking disaster. The Democrats are currently eating each other up. Haley Stevens and Abdul El Sayed. Yes, you just heard that right. That's in Michigan. A guy named Abdul El Sayed is a potential Democratic candidate in the Midwestern state of Michigan. Abdul El Sayed, as you could probably envision from his name, is running a very far left, third worldist campaign. And then you have Haley Stevens, who is a lot more of a typical Democrat from Michigan, much more of a typical woke suburban Democrat. The primary, it does look like El Sayed is going to beat Stevens. Now, if Democrats were smart, they would be coalescing behind Stevens, but because Democrats, for some reason, want to hand Republicans a victory in Michigan, they're going to nominate Abdul El Sayed. Now, Mike Rogers barely lost last time around in 2024. He barely lost last time around in what was a very close race. I'm trying to remember who he ran against. It was Alyssa Slotkin. He ran against Alyssa Slotkin and lost by like 19,000 votes after being outspent, outplayed on every facet. Rogers just fell short. And he underran, Trump in a lot of areas that he probably shouldn't have. I think that changes this, and part of it was Slotkin is a very strong candidate. Rogers this time around, I think, is better prepared. And with the Democrats eating each other alive, I think right now, with El Sayed probably being the nominee, we'll see. The primary is on, I think, August 11th, the same day as Minnesota's primary. I believe it's August 4th, so it's actually coming up pretty soon. I believe that Mike Rogers will win currently. Yes, Michigan is a lot bluer at the state level and at the Senate level than it is at the presidential level. Yes, 2022 Democrats swept Michigan and won a trifecta. Yes, the exact same thing happened in 2018 when Republicans were supposed to be competitive. However, counterpoint, this is a much different race. Mike Rogers, he is not the lady that ran in 2022. He's not Tudor Dixon. And he is not Bill Schuette. Mike Rogers is, a fairly inoffensive candidate. He's not, talking about how rape babies are a gift from God, which is I agree with, but you can't really say that in a pro-choice state like Michigan. And the Democrats are just eating each other alive in their primary. So as a result, I think this gives Rogers, if the election were held tomorrow, a pretty good advantage right now. Now, if the nominee ends up being Haley Stevens, I think you could flip this race to lean Democratic. But if it is El Sayed, which it looks like it will be, Dems, give or take, are not screwed, but they're at a significant disadvantage. So, this is my Senate prediction. I think Democrats flip the state of North Carolina. Republicans hold on in Maine, and then they flip Michigan. I know this might come as a shock to people, but I don't think this will be like a huge blue wave like 2018. I think this is a lot more akin to the 2018 Senate elections where, some of the races are more, 50-50. Like, yeah, Dems will probably win the popular vote, but at the same time, the states that Dems have to win the Senate. I mean, even if they sweep Michigan, let's say they win Michigan, they win Maine, they're still not even at 50. They would then have to rely on flipping Ohio, Texas. And even still, I don't think they'll flip either. I don't think they'll flip both at the same time. It's not going to happen. I don't remember what I had Ohio as. I'm going to leave it as this. Likely, I don't remember what I think I had it by 5.5, 6. I don't think Dems will flip every single toss-up. They're not gonna flip Texas. They could flip Ohio, but it's not likely. And they're definitely not winning Florida. So people can stop with that. They are definitely not winning Florida. But yeah, that's what I think will happen. Republicans, I mean, in terms of seat changes, nothing changes. Seat count, nothing changes. Republicans flip a seat, Democrats flip a seat. And so not much changes. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video. I will try to upload more often. I've been working over an overnight job, so I do have more time on my hands on my days off than I used to. So I will try and upload more YouTube videos occasionally as we get closer to the midterms. But yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I will talk to you whenever. Peace out.